Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Hope you guys are doing well. I hope you're having a wonderful morning. It's a beautiful and sunny morning out here. And yes, we are back again for yet another live broadcast for us to speak morning sports and much more. There is a lot to talk about, but our main focus will be in the preview of Premier League's match day 30 that does get underway tonight. Three games do come up on Tuesday. There will be about about six games that will follow on Wednesday night, and then on Thursday night we will be having one game. It will be a London derby there. So to get things underway, I mean, there's always an unavoidable topic that you cannot just ignore, especially as you draw closer towards the tail end of the season, and that's transfer speculation. As of this morning, the transfer speculation that we do have involves Arsenal. Yesterday we did speak on matters, Manchester United, and in the days earlier, but it is being reported that Arsenal are interested in signing Leroy Sané, whose contract does expire at the end of this season with Bayern Munich. Yes, Arsenal interested in signing Leroy Sané. That's according to reports from Germany. But it is yet to be attained whether Bayern Munich are willing to, keep the player. The player does want to stay in the German Bundesliga, of course. He's a German international. So, I mean, what is better than playing from home? So, but Bayern Munich have, I think, up to 2 weeks, or have set themselves a period of 2 weeks to make a final decision on whether to reward Leroy Sané with a new contract. Remember, he was part of the UEFA Champions League winning squad in 2020 when I think they beat up against PSG on the final by goal to nil. So he is a much appreciated player at Bayern Munich, although contract talks had not yet begun on a new contract. It looks like Bayern Munich has got a couple of these players. The other player that is destined to depart the club, unless anything changes, even though he would have wanted to stay, is one I would regard as a legend at the club in Thomas Muller. Thomas Muller, for me, first broke out, I think, in the FIFA World Cup of 2010 that was hosted in South Africa. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I do stand to be corrected, but he did score, I think, a brace against England when they beat them by 4-1 in that particular game. Miroslav Klose scoring the opening goal in that particular fixture. And then I think it was Steven Gerrard that scored for England. Frank Lampard had a goal that wasn't counted but clearly crossed the line. So that's, for me, that's my biggest memory of Thomas Muller. That's where it dates from going onward. So he's a German Bayern Munich legend. Then we all know that Joshua Kimmich has been also one of those players in the news with regards to his contract situation with the German Giants, and he's one of those that have been linked with major moves, especially to Europe, to England, including with speculation pointing him in the direction of Arsenal. There's been speculation on Manchester United and Man City, although he's a 30-year-old there, but he does have lots of experience. So, hi, Jackie, welcome to the broadcast. So, Joshua Kimmich, Leroy Sané, you have Thomas Muller, Leon Goretzka has not so far back been in a similar kind of conversation of whether to let him go live at the club. So clearly that speculation means that Bayern Munich either they want to embark on, another squad rebuild. Of course, they did sign significant players and they've been signing young players within that respect, including signing Jamal Musiala onto a new contract. So the likes of Michael Olise, who they did sign last summer when they, onboarded Vincent Kompany as their new manager. But the speculation is that linking of Leroy Sané to Arsenal. Is there any attraction? Yes, of course, we all know the links between Leroy Sané and manager Mikel Arteta because they did work together at Manchester City. Is he the Leroy Sané that we do remember at Man City? Maybe not. Probably the one of Man City was much faster, was a better finisher than the one we've seen at Bayern Munich, but even though the version that we've seen at Bayern Munich has equally been effective, although not very consistently as he had been at Man City. And then the kind of player he is, he can play on both the left and the right wing, although predominantly I think on the right wing. So where Arsenal don't need cover, and again with that similar respect, there's been speculation linking Nico Williams with a move to Arsenal. That speculation dating to as far back as last summer. So clearly, all that is in that mix. But if Arsenal fans out there, do let me know. Would you be interested? Would you be delighted if Arsenal were to sign Leroy Sané as a free agent, of course? And then we all know that yesterday we did discuss Victor Gyökeres, who is said to be of very much interest to the new sporting director, that's in Andrea Beta at Arsenal. So clearly, it looks like things are heating up there for Arsenal. Now, these players, of course, they do attract interest from other big clubs, but at the moment, it's Arsenal that has been making the biggest of news in that respect. Anyway, allow me to move on very fast away from that topic and then head down straight to the Premier League preview. Like I said, we do have 3 games tonight. Arsenal up against Fulham in the London Derby. That game does kick off at 9:45 East African time, and then you will have West Ham away to Wolverhampton Wanderers. We all know that now this particular game of Wolverhampton Wanderers does come in the wake of those comments to the Guardian from Matthias Cunha, who said he couldn't leave Wolves in the middle of the season when they were battling relegation. That's why he decided to renew his contract. But like reports did suggest after the renewal of that contract is that he did have a gentleman's agreement that should, a bigger suitors come for him, especially clubs that are playing in the UEFA Champions League, then the club should be willing to let him go for a certain fee. Could be anywhere between 50 to 70 million euros thereabout. So that was the figure speculated at the time. So he did come out to say that he's a man of ambition. He would want to win major trophies. That's the Premier League, maybe the UEFA Champions League. If he's to go to La Liga, of course, the speculation, I think, linking him with the potential move to Barcelona. Remember, he's a former Atletico Madrid player who Andre Bata himself had signed while he was still sporting director at Atletico Madrid before he moved on to Wolverhampton Wanderers, where he's shown the rest of the world what he's capable of. During the international break, he did score a goal for Brazil there. So the Brazilian international or playmaker are very, very good in that number 10 role. At least he's shown us this season. Anyway, so that game will be between Wolverhampton Wanderers up against West Ham United, while the other game that does kick off at 10 p.m. East African time will come between Nottingham Forest versus Manchester United. So a very, very interesting fixture that we do expect or we do wait for in respect to today's fixtures. So where do we start things at? Let's start these things at the Emirates Stadium, where Arsenal will be in the London Derby against Fulham. Now, we're talking about a side that has been quite very stubborn or proven to be very stubborn for this Arsenal side. I think last season, Arsenal were unable to beat up against Fulham over 2 legs. The first leg, I think, ended in a 2-2 draw. That was at the Emirates Stadium, but Arsenal did lose the reverse fixture, I think, by 2-1. Raul Jimenez scoring in that one, while Bukayo Saka, I think, had scored for Arsenal earlier on. And then who was the scorer for Fulham for that second goal? The name eludes me. Sorry about that. But then, even this season, the first leg ended in a 1-1 draw. So clearly, things have not been pretty for Arsenal in this fixture. That's versus Fulham. I think you'd have to go back to last season, but that's the 2022-2023 campaign when Arsenal managed to beat up against Fulham home and away. You all remember that away game that ended in a 3-0 victory for the Gunners. I think all 3 goals scored in the first half. what's his name? Leandro Trossard providing a hat trick of assists. Martinelli scoring one of those. Gabriel Magalhaes scoring the other, and then I think Martin Odegaard. In that very game, if you do remember, that's when Arsenal welcomed back the return of Gabriel Jesus from his then long injury. While the initial fixture, Arsenal had won it 2-1. So that was for the 2022-2023 campaign. For the 2023-2024 campaign, Arsenal failed to get any over Fulham, and this season has so far been not different because that first leg ended in a 1-1 draw. I think Raul Jimenez and was on target for Fulham, while William Saliba did score Arsenal's goal in that game. So it's a tricky fixture. That midfield, that Marco Silva does field of 5 players, where you have Sasa Lukic, Sander Berge, Adama Traore, Alex Iwobi, and then of course at the tip of that midfield is Emil Smith-Rowe, and then of course Raul Jimenez does lead the lines when they play with one striker. But they also do have a Rodrigo Muniz, another striker there that sometimes does lead the lines. So very, very, a good Fulham side. They also have another former Arsenal player in Bernard Leno in their goal. Then you ought to mention Ante Robinson. I think he's been one of quite the revelation this season, one of the star players of the season. He has so far 10 Premier League assists. So then there's another Fulham player called Harry Wilson. This one oftentimes comes off the bench to punish teams, and he's done it on multiple occasions this season, although he was unable to do that on the weekend as Fulham lost by 3 goals to nil against Crystal Palace in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. So the fixture itself, proven head-to-head, it proves that Arsenal have only won 2 of their last 5 fixtures against Fulham, while Fulham have won 1, and the other 2 have ended in draws. So that should paint you a picture for the kind of fixture that you should be expecting between these 2 sides. And then, more notably, Fulham, like I mentioned briefly, is home to many former Arsenal players. We have Bernard Leno in goal. We do have Alex Iwobi. He did leave Arsenal, for those of you that do remember, and he joined Everton, where he switched before switching allegiances to Fulham. You have Emil Smith-Rowe that joined Fulham this summer. You do have Reece Nelson, although this one is on loan from Arsenal to Fulham, and that kind of thing. We're talking about the Fulham side that does come into this particular fixture on the back of that heavy defeat against Crystal Palace, like I mentioned. Crystal Palace beating them by 3 goals to nil. Those goals by another former Arsenal player in Edin Ketia, then of course Ismail Sarr and Ebelechi Eze. So that's the kind of so it's going to be a tight fixture. I think West Ham and Fulham are one of those London teams that have given Arsenal a bit of headache in recent times. And when you look at Arsenal's form table in the last 5 games, they only have 1 loss, and that 1 loss was against West Ham by losing by 1 goal to nil. That goal scored by Gerard Bowen. The other have been 2 draws, and they've recorded 2 victories. The victories coming as far back as against Leicester City by 2 goals to nil, and then beating up against Chelsea in their most previous Premier League game by 1 goal to nil. That goal scored by Mikel Merino off, I think, a Martin Odegaard corner. And then in between there, they had 2 draws, one against Manchester United, a 1-1 draw, and a 0-0 draw against Nottingham Forest. So their form has not been that good. Clearly, it's not been that good. When you look at the Fulham side, on the other hand, Fulham have recorded 3 victories and 2 losses in the last 5 games. Those losses, I think, the victory is coming against teams like Tottenham Hotspurs, who they did beat up against by 2 goals to 1. Then their losses did come against Crystal Palace, beat them by 2 goals to nil, and then I think Brighton beat them by 2 goals to 1 in those 2 losses. While in that spell where they recorded 3 victories and 2 losses during that time, as far as it goes. But among the wins, yes, Spurs, they beat Nottingham Forest, and then they beat Wolverhampton Wanderers. Yes. So that's the look of the form table. So why do Fulham always give Arsenal a headache? First of all, they come with that mentality, more or less the one that Nottingham Forest faces of Arsenal in recent times, knowing that they're going to concede ball possession or domination to Arsenal, and then try and leverage in breaking up play when Arsenal are pressing up high or have committed their numbers high, and then take them on the counter. You have a very fast Alex Iwobi, Emile Smith-Rowe is a very fast player, Adama Traore is a very fast player, and then that mix. And then sometimes playing that long ball towards Raul Jimenez, who is capable of holding up play and that kind of thing. So do expect a very, very entertaining fixture for this one. But what's the motivation for Arsenal in this fixture with 12 points adrift of table leaders Liverpool, who are 70, while Arsenal at 58? You do think that Arsenal have every reason to be motivated to go and win up against Fulham, so that they can close the gap from 12 points to just to maybe 9 before Liverpool play, who knowing that Liverpool have a very tough fixture on Wednesday, that's tomorrow, when they host Everton in that Merseyside derby. So very fast fixture. So that's Arsenal's first motivation. Then the other motivation is that Arsenal want to build a bit of momentum ahead of the UEFA Champions League clash against Real Madrid. For those of you that do not know, or for those of you that are looking for insights about that particular fixture, we've already discussed it, and videos are already up on the channel. 5 reasons as to why I think Arsenal will be scared or should be scared when ahead of that Real Madrid fixture. Then another, and then I also, on the other hand, also give you reasons why Real Madrid will have something to think about facing Arsenal, or why their hearts will have to skip a bit going on to face Arsenal. All that discussion is right on the channel, so do check it out. Then in terms of building momentum, they would want to win this particular fixture, because after this particular game, over the weekend, they will be up against Everton at the Goodison Park. Now, that's a place where in recent times, they've not really had so much success in terms of, I think, the last couple of years combined. So they would want to use these 2 games to build that bit of momentum that, sort of builds on their confidence ahead of that UEFA Champions League game. And nothing would better do that than you win a London derby. If you go ahead and beat up against Fulham, if you go on the weekend and beat up against Everton, never mind what the scoreline will be, just go and beat up against those teams if you Arsenal. On the Arsenal side, of course, there's so much interesting news with Bukayo Saka returning from injury. That was confirmed at yesterday's pre-match press conference by Mikel Arteta, saying that Starboy is good to go. He said he did go on to mention that they had stuck to the timelines, they had respected the timelines, although the player was pushing so much to return much faster. He says he's in a better condition than the all expected. Will he start the game? Of course, I certainly do not think so. Knowing how Mikel Arteta operates, I do not think he would give Bukayo Saka the nod to start this particular game. Even when his attacking options may be quite limited, because he would want to ease him back into, probably give him the last maybe 20 minutes, maybe at most 30 minutes, bring him on the half-hour mark, and then let him, have a run. But I do anywhere between the last 20 and 15 minutes thereabout should be enough for the Starboy to warm his way up. And then, of course, you go into the weekend fixture where you face Everton and also give him a bit of a run. Now, the weekend game, of course, against Everton is a bit of a physical battle. So, again, you do wonder whether he will be ready to start that one. Personally, I wouldn't want to think so. But maybe, again, another good run of 30 minutes will help boost his physical fitness in preparation for that crucial fixture. Then, yes, that basically paints for you, I think, the picture that you do need for this particular fixture. for Arsenal versus Fulham. Sorry, we dragged it on. Close to 15 minutes. We're discussing this one fixture, but it is worth it because it's Arsenal versus Fulham. Arsenal is a big team. I know there's lots of fans out there that do support Gunners, and then so on the Arsenal side, of course, the injuries are there. Ricardo Carafiori returned with an injury from international break, although manager Mikel Arteta said will be out for a couple of weeks. He didn't state categorically how many weeks, but he says it will be a matter of weeks. The injury is not as bad as they had first feared. So that's the kind of picture that is at Arsenal. So you do expect that David Raya starts in goal, centre back pair of Gabriel Magalhaes and William Saliba. You do expect Miles Lewis-Kelly at left back and Julian Timber, who, by the way, had an issue, and Mikel Arteta also came out to say he's also fine at right back. But should he not be ready to start at right back, then Ben White is all available to start. And then that midfield of Thomas Partey, and then Declan Rice and Martin Odegaard. Thomas Partey, of course, Arsenal have come under a lot of criticism, especially from Ghana, for criticizing Arsenal for not celebrating Thomas Partey's successes during the international break. There's that game in which he scored a burst. So because they did not post him like the other players, like the likes of Miles Lewis-Kelly, the likes of Martin Odegaard, who had, I think, a hat-trick of assists, as Norway beat up against Israel during that international break. So Arsenal fans or Ghanaians in general have been giving Arsenal a bit of, bashing for not, celebrating their marksman's, prowesses or successes while on international duty. But then forward lines, Ethan Nwanery's form recently has not been that great. He had sort of dipped in form, but I do know for a fact that he did score during the international break for England's under-21s. So I do suspect that it will be Mikel Merino to lead the lines, and then Leandro Trossard on one side, and then Gabriel Martinelli on the other. And of course, you have the likes of Raheem Sterling to the bench, Bukayo Saka, Ethan Nwanery, Jorginho, Jakub Kiwior, etc. In that respect. So clearly, that's the expectation. Big question is, what are your predictions? My prediction is a very difficult 2-1 win for Arsenal. That's my prediction, and I do hope it does come to pass. I can only hope that it does come to bear fruit. Although Arsenal's Premier League form hasn't been that great. I think in the last 9 they've won 4, they've lost, they've drawn 3 and lost 2. I think across all competitions, is it, or just the Premier League? Anyway, it is what it is. Moving away from that particular fixture, allow me run to Nottingham Forest, where Nottingham Forest does face off with Manchester United. Another very, very, very entertaining fixture that we should expect on our hands. Now, the fixture in itself does come in the wake of very good news at Manchester United with the return of, I think, about 3 or 4 players from injury. Harry Maguire, Lenio, Luke Shaw, all back from injury. I think Mason Mount should be in that cohort who are back on the tough training. So that should be a morale booster for Manchester United. We all know that they had fallen really, really thin or short on defensive numbers with injuries to Victor Lindelof, to Harry Maguire, to, of course, Lisandro Martinez, to Lenio. Lenio did get himself injured in that 1-1 draw against Arsenal. So that had left them really short on numbers in defense, for those of you that remember. And they've had to rely on the likes of the youngster in Aiden Heaven, of course, Mazaroi, then Iago Dalot, some of those players that they've relied on in recent times, including in their 3-0 victory against Leicester City for the last fixture, in which I think Bruno Fernandes was on target, as well as Alejandro Garnacho. Yes, Alejandro Garnacho in that particular fixture. So exciting news for them. And then Nottingham Forest come into the very fixture quite in high spirits after their advancement to the semi-finals of the FA Cup, in which they were first off with Manchester City. They did knock out Brighton and Hove Albion 4-3 on post-match penalties over the weekend. But in terms of these two sides, head-to-head, Manchester United have struggled to beat up against Nottingham Forest in the last 2 or 3 fixtures. Yes, I think in the last in the last 2 fixtures, Nottingham Forest are unbeaten against Man United. They've won their last 2 fixtures. But the key note or takeaway for me is that it's in recent times been a high scoring fixture. For example, the last was a 3-2 victory for Nottingham Forest, and then before that it was a 2-1 for Nottingham Forest. So clearly, there's a lot to play for between these two sides. For those of you that do place your bets, bear it in mind that these two teams have been scoring the goals. So an over 2.5. Those of you bet know these things better than I. But when you trace back, when you generalize it all, in the last 5 meetings between the two sides, United have the lion's share with 3 victories over Nottingham Forest, but there've been no draws at all whatsoever, and that's quite very telling. That they do not settle for less. You either beat them or they beat you. That's depending on what side of the aisle that you do stand for this particular fixture. So Ruben Amorim speaking, I think in the pre-match press conference for this particular fixture, was asked about Marcus Rashford's form, whether he's given him some bit of food for thought, and he said he has all his attention on the players he has at Man United at the moment. But just as a teaser or a footnote, he did say that he does follow what their players that are on loan are doing, and he wishes them the best of luck. I think those lines were drawn between Marcus Rashford, and the manager in Ruben Amorim, and I do not think there is a way back for these two. But they are not permanent enemies. But United, in their last 5, have won, I think, 2, just beating up against Leicester. They've drawn 2 and lost 1. The loss against Spurs. Their form hasn't been bad, and across all competitions, they've fared really well in the last couple of games. But Nottingham Forest, on the other side, have also not been bad. In the last 3 games, they're unbeaten across the 5. In terms of form, they've only lost 2, and those losses coming against Newcastle and Fulham. And then their victories have been against Ipswich, Man City, and the draw against Arsenal. Yeah, that victory against Man City. I remember that game, I was on the road. Akam Hudson-Odoi scoring the goal in that particular game, doing it all for Nottingham Forest, just like he did when Nottingham Forest beat up against Liverpool at Anfield by a goal to nil. So clearly, there's that. So United's victories have come against teams in the bottom half of the table, teams that are battling relegation, because they did beat up against Ipswich Town by 3 goals to 2, even though they were down to 10 men. Patrick Dogu getting the red card in that one, and then beating up against Leicester by 3 goals to 0. Perfect score for us on that prediction. Then a 1-1 draw in between there with Arsenal, and then of course the other draw coming up against Everton in a 2-goal draw, and then the loss against Tottenham Hotspurs. My prediction for this one is that Nottingham Forest are going to win it 2-1. Nottingham Forest is my prediction. What's your prediction? Do let me know down. Do let me know down in the comment section. Thank you to all our new subscribers. Welcome to the Football Tribe community. Do not forget to watch our content, like, comment, and share. There's a lot of good content for you on the channel. Check out our shorts, check out our videos, check out our live broadcasts there under those sections, and enjoy our content. Like I said, there's a lot we'll be discussing. I will be looking at why I think football players have sold their future. We'll be having a conversation on that one. Otherwise, allow me end it here at the half-hour mark and wish you a wonderful rest of the day. See you until tomorrow. Plenty of games coming your way tomorrow. We'll have a look at those and, of course, the results that will have transpired tonight across those three fixtures. Bye-bye. Stay blessed and have a wonderful rest of the day.